Okay, good morning students. Today we are going to have a look at the numericals and the reasoning questions for the portion that we have covered in calorimetry. Okay, this lecture is important because till now whatever concepts you have learned in terms of heat capacity, specific heat capacity, all these will be reflected in terms of the practical aspects or in terms of the numericals or the reasoning questions that are there. Okay, so they are important from the point of view of being asked in the exam also. Okay, so I'll just take a few minutes to first have a small revision of sorts of what you have done till now in this particular lecture. If you see over here, these are the two things that I have listed over here. One term, both of these terms you have already studied. One is heat capacity of any substance and the other one is specific heat capacity of any substance. Okay, so now what is the difference that you have understood? You see, between these two words the only difference is this word specific. Whenever the term specific comes, then it means it is for a unit mass. Okay, it is always for 1 kg mass. Okay, so what is it actually? You see, let us first have a look at the symbols that we use. Specific heat capacity, obviously we use a small c to denote it, and heat capacity we denote it with a c and with a dash at the top. Okay, so you can call it as c dash and c. Okay, now definition wise, if you study, heat capacity is the amount of heat energy required. So you see, when I will speak of the definition, you will follow it with the formula that is there listed, written over here. Okay, so heat capacity, which is C dash of any substance, is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of that substance by 1 degree centigrade or 1 Kelvin. Okay, did I use the word unit mass of the substance here? No. So heat capacity of any substance is regardless of the amount of the substance taken or regardless of the mass of the substance taken. You can take this much of mass, you can take bigger mass. The only thing that you will notice is you will keep on giving it heat and you will observe the rise in temperature to be 1 Kelvin. So in that rise of temperature by 1 Kelvin, whatever heat energy you have transferred to that substance will be known as the heat capacity. So obviously the formula is Q, which means heat energy supplied, divided by delta T, which is the change in temperature or the rise or even the fall in the temperature if it gives out heat. Okay. Now coming to the word specific heat capacity, which also has been explained by ma'am. Specific heat capacity is the amount of heat energy required by unit mass of a substance. That is why we have put in the formula a term for the mass also, small m. Okay, so specific heat capacity is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of unit mass of a substance by 1 Kelvin. Okay, so this time if you observe these two formulae, the difference will be this m that has come in the denominator. So by dividing the Q by m, what we get is we get the amount of heat energy required by unit mass, which is 1 kg mass of that substance. So for that 1 kg mass is the word specific coming. Okay, so these are the two formulae that you will always have to keep in mind, not just the formulae but the concept behind it. Okay, now having revised that, let us quickly go ahead and have a look at question number 1. You are given 3 substances A, B and C having specific heat capacity values. So I am going to just underline this word specific heat capacity. So we are talking about this. Okay, you are given 3 substances A, B, C having specific heat capacity values of 900, 380 and 460 joule per kg degrees centigrade, or it can be joules per kg Kelvin also, because remember the change in temperature is the same on both scales. Okay, so 900, 380 and 460 are the 3 values of the specific heat capacity for these 3 substances respectively. The question is, which one of these will you prefer for making a calorimeter and why? Okay, now although the question appears to be a bit lengthy and complex, the answer to this question is pretty simple only if you understand these two concepts. Okay, and one other thing that you have to understand is obviously the functioning of a calorimeter. Okay, what is this particular thing used for? Okay, so we have just learned in the previous lecture that a calorimeter is a container or a vessel which is basically used to mix two different substances at two different temperatures, allowing them to transfer heat from hot body to the cold body, so that eventually both the substances or both the liquids or both the solids, they come at one particular common temperature. As you all know, whenever you touch a hot body with a cold body, there is a transfer of heat energy from hot body to the cold body. And how long will that transfer keep on taking place? Till the time both the temperatures, both the body temperatures or both the temperatures of both the bodies are same. Okay, so whenever there is a difference of temperature between the two bodies and they are made to contact each other, so the heat will flow from hot body to the cold body. So this is exactly what a calorimeter facilitates. Okay, so the diagram of the calorimeter you all have studied in the previous lecture. So now we all know that a calorimeter, in this process of allowing the heat to transfer from the hot body to the cold body, the material of the calorimeter is also in constant touch with the bodies, the hot body as well as the cold body, because eventually you pour the hot body also into the calorimeter and you pour the cold body or the cold liquid also in the same calorimeter. So the material of the calorimeter also gets in touch with the bodies. So that means the calorimeter will also take up some amount of heat from the hot body. So it is very important that we choose the material of the calorimeter so that it takes up minimum amount of heat. Okay, why? Because remember, the external disturbance or the external loss should be minimum. That is why the calorimeter must have a low value of C, and that is why if you have read the details of the chapter, you will find that copper is usually chosen for making up a calorimeter because of the low value of specific heat capacity. And the definition of specific heat capacity, once again, go back to the definition. What does the specific heat capacity mean? It is the amount of heat energy taken up by unit mass of a substance for 1 degree rise in temperature or 1 Kelvin rise in temperature. So lesser the amount of heat taken, lesser will be the specific heat capacity. So for a calorimeter substance, we need a substance which has low value of C. That means it should not take up a lot of heat from the hot body. So therefore, out of these three values, you can see that 380 joule per kg degrees centigrade, which is for B, because you see A, B and C respectively. So B will be your answer. Okay, substance B will be chosen. Okay. Now let us quickly move on to the second question, and this is a common question that you will find, but a very important one. Why is water, the universal solvent or the liquid, used as an effective coolant? Coolant is something that cools. Okay, so if you have observed in the four-wheelers, the automobiles, there is always a coolant that is used, which is slightly green in color and has a lot of water mixed in it. So what is the purpose of this coolant? This coolant runs all around the engine of the automobile. Why? Because you see, if you drive the automobile for a long time, the engine keeps getting heated up. Okay, so you cannot allow the engine to be heated up indefinitely and so that finally it burns down. So that should be avoided. That is why there has to be an effective coolant, something that cools up the engine. Okay, so how will the engine be cooled? When something takes away the heat of the engine. So that something is water. Why? You read ahead. Because it has a high value of a specific heat capacity. You see, the purpose of a coolant is to take up as much heat as possible. That is why whatever material we are using or whatever liquid we are using as a coolant should have a high value of specific heat capacity. Why? Because a high value of a specific heat capacity will mean that it withdraws a large amount of heat from the hot substance without itself getting heated up too much. Okay, so you read the reasoning answer entirely. You see, because it has a, what has a, water has a, because water has a high value of specific heat capacity, which means that it can take a lot of heat from the hot engine without itself getting heated much. So I'll give you an alternate scenario now. Suppose you do not take water and you take some other liquid. Okay, now that other liquid, in the process of taking up heat from the engine, itself becomes very hot. Okay, so suppose in 5 minutes it takes up the heat from the engine, but it itself becomes very hot. So once that coolant itself becomes hot, what will happen? Can it be used further as a coolant? No. So that is why we should use a liquid which is able to take away a lot of heat from the engine, but at the same time its own temperature does not rise much. Okay, so such substances or such liquids must have a high value of specific heat capacity, and water seems to be the most appropriate choice here. Okay, so that is as far as the conceptual and the reasoning portion is concerned. Now we'll go ahead and solve a couple of numericals. Okay, so moving on to the first numerical, let us first read the question. Calculate the amount of heat energy required. So what is required? Let me underline it. It is the heat energy required to raise the temperature of a piece of iron. Okay, so what is being heated? A piece of iron is being heated up. What is the mass of the iron? The mass of the iron piece is 2 kgs, and we have to increase the temperature by 15 degrees centigrade. Okay, what is the information given apart from this? Given is heat capacity of iron is 966 joules per Kelvin. Okay, please note that this information is not the specific heat capacity, but it is the heat capacity. So out of these two formulae that I have listed over here, you must already know by now, we have discussed it many times, this is specific heat capacity and this is heat capacity. Okay, difference I have already explained. So this information that is given is your C dash. Okay, so now let us first list the information that is available to us. We have the mass as 2 kgs. Okay, this is already in SI units, so we don't have to change anything. Delta T, which is the change in the temperature. So that change in the temperature is 15 degrees centigrade. So 15 degrees centigrade, obviously the change in temperature will remain as 15 Kelvin. Okay, remember the individual temperatures are different in degrees Celsius and in Kelvin, but the change in the temperature, the rise or the fall, the change in the temperature is always same whether you talk about degrees centigrade or you talk about Kelvin. Okay, so M is given, delta T is given, what else is given? Heat capacity of iron. So we have the value of C dash given as 966 joule per Kelvin. Okay, so all these now are in SI units. So what is being asked? Calculate the amount of heat energy. So Q is being asked. Okay, the value of Q is being asked over here. So which formula? In fact, you can use both the formulae, but it will be easier for us to use the second formula. So let us use the second formula over here. We have C dash is equal to Q upon delta T. Okay, so basically we have to find Q, therefore this Q becomes C dash multiplied by delta T. So when you put the value of C dash, C dash is 966 multiplied by delta T. Delta T is 15. Okay. The reason why we actually don't need the mass over here is because we are talking about the heat capacity. We are talking about the heat capacity in which mass does not matter. Okay. It is always in terms of specific heat capacity when we take for unit kg, unit mass. Okay. So therefore when you multiply this, you are going to get the final value, which is 14490 joules. Okay. So that will be your final answer. So this much joule of heat energy will be required to increase the temperature of 2 kg of iron piece by 15 degrees centigrade or 15 Kelvin. Okay. So this is the first simple problem that we have discussed. Let us move on to the next question now. Okay, so here is the next question. Calculate the heat capacity of a copper vessel. Okay, so there is a vessel which is made up of copper. What is the mass of that particular vessel? The mass is 150 gram. Okay, if the specific heat capacity of copper is this much. Okay, so basically there are two pieces of information given to you in this question, which is one is mass, which is 150 grams. So this immediately becomes 0.150 kg. If you want to convert it, you have to in fact convert it into SI unit. So the mass of the copper vessel becomes 0.15 kg. Okay. The other information that is given is specific heat capacity of copper, which is C, not C dash. Okay, so this is given as 410 joules per kg Kelvin. Everything is in SI units. Okay, what are we being asked? We are being asked the heat capacity. So that means we are basically being asked the value of C dash. Okay, the value of C dash is what we are being asked. Okay, now have a look at these two formulae once again. I have listed those two formulae. So we will now try to establish a relationship between C and C dash. You see, in our question there are only two things that are known, M and C, and we have to get C dash. So when you look at this particular formula, the first line it says C is equal to, now you see this Q upon delta T, this portion is nothing but your C dash. Okay, so C dash upon what is left? M is left. Okay, so this is that relationship that exists between the specific heat capacity C and the heat capacity C dash. Okay, so essentially, although it looks like a third formula, but this is actually not a separate formula. This is just the use of the first two formulae that we have discussed. Okay, so if you want, you can just memorize this, or you can get it from the two formula that we have already studied. Okay, so using this formula, now let me write down C is equal to C dash upon M. Okay, so this M can go over here. You will have C dash is equal to M into C. Okay, what is the mass value? The mass value is 0.15. Even if you don't put a 0 over here, since this 0 is the last digit after the decimal, it will not matter. Into C, the C value is 410. So eventually when you calculate, this will come out to be 61.5 joules per. Any guesses about the units? C dash, please remember, the formula is Q upon delta T. There is no M in it. So Q unit is joules divided by delta T, unit will be Kelvin. Okay, so this is the value of heat capacity that we had been asked according to the question. Okay, so these are the two numericals. Now let us move on to the last numerical of this lecture, which will indeed give you a much better final idea of the process of one body losing heat and the other body gaining heat. Okay. Okay, so there will be two more questions. These will be much more complex problems in a way. So please pay attention to these two solutions. These two solutions, if you understand them properly, you will be able to do most of the questions given in the book as far as the portion covered till now is concerned. Okay. Question number 5. A mass of 50 gram of a certain substance at 150 degrees centigrade is immersed in 100 grams of water at 11 degrees centigrade. Okay. So from this much portion of the question, what do we understand? We understand, number one, that there are two substances, that there are two things being mixed together. Okay. One is a substance, a metal maybe, or any particular piece of a metal. It is weighing 50 grams and it is at a temperature of 150 degrees centigrade. So this is a pretty hot substance that we have, and this substance is being immersed in 100 gram of water at 11 degrees centigrade. So the water is at 11 degrees centigrade, that is much lower temperature than the temperature of the substance. Okay, so it is very normal for us to understand that the substance which is being poured into water, that substance is the hot substance, and the water over here in question will be the cooler substance. Okay, the reason why I am telling you this is because this is a question involving the heat flow from a hot body to a cold body. Okay, the hot body is the substance and the cooler body is water at 11 degrees centigrade. Okay, so what will be the result of this mixing? You see, such that the final temperature of the contents becomes 20 degrees centigrade. So it is obvious that when you pour a hot body, when you pour a hot substance into a cooler liquid, after some time there will be a final temperature that will be maintained, because the heat will flow from, excess heat will flow from the hot substance to the cold substance, and after some time when both the temperatures become same, that temperature is known as the final temperature. Okay, so assuming the specific heat capacities of water to be this, find the specific heat capacity of the substance. Okay, so because there are two substances involved here, one is water, the other one is the unknown substance. So for one we know the specific heat capacity, whereas for the other one we have to find out. Okay, so what is the concept that we will apply over here? The concept will be the principle of calorimetry or principle of methods of mixtures, as ma'am had already discussed this with you. Principle of, so we will write according to principle of calorimetry. Okay, you can also write principle of method of mixtures. Okay, now what does this principle state? We don't have to state the principle over here, but just for understanding, heat lost by one body, which will obviously be the hotter body, equal to heat gained by the cooler body or the colder body. Okay, so this is the principle on which, based on which these numericals will be solved. This is known as the principle of calorimetry. So heat lost by one body, obviously which body loses heat? The hot body loses heat. So you can also replace this by heat lost by the hot body will be equal to the heat gained by the cooler body. Obviously the assumption will be that there is no heat lost. Okay, so this principle of calorimetry is incomplete till you mention the point that there is no heat lost to the surrounding. Okay, so we will assume that there is no heat being lost. Whatever heat the substance transfers, water will be taking it up. Okay, so since on both sides we have heat lost on left side, heat gained on the right side, so heat is nothing but Q. So on the left hand side I am writing Q1, on the right hand side it will be Q2. Okay, heat lost and heat gained. So the formula will be M1 C1 delta T1. because our Q formula is mc delta T. If you do not remember, I'll just list down over here. C is equal to Q upon m delta T. This particular formula I've been writing for at least 3 times I have written in this particular lecture. Okay, so from this same formula, m delta T comes this side, so you have Q is equal to mc delta T. Reason why I'm writing 111 as suffix is because the right hand side will also involve heat. Okay, so here I will write m2 C2 delta T2. Okay, so please remember, on the left side is the hot body. Which is the hot body? The substance. Okay, so about the substance, what is the mass of the substance present? The mass of the substance was 50 gram multiplied by C1. So C1 again is the specific heat capacity of the substance, which we have to find out. So we will keep this as C1 multiplied by T1. T1 means the change in temperature. Okay, so on the left hand side we have the hot body giving out heat, so its temperature will cool down. Okay, so earlier the temperature was 150 degrees, now it has come down to 20 degrees. So the change in temperature will be 150 minus 20. Okay, similarly on the right side, now right side is about the cooler body. Cooler body is water over here. Mass given is 100 grams multiplied by C2 is for water. C means specific heat capacity. So specific heat capacity for water is 4.2 multiplied by delta T2, which is the change in temperature of water. Now please note that in case of water, the initial temperature was 11 and the final temperature is 20. So there has been a change of 20 minus 11. Okay, this part is where you have to be very careful. One body which is losing heat, its temperature falls down. The other body, which is the cooler body, which gains heat, its temperature rises. Okay, so eventually you have to take the difference of the temperature. On one side there will be a fall, on one side there will be a rise. So you have to take the difference. You cannot do 11 minus 20, because in that case it will become negative. You have to take the difference. Okay. Now the second most important thing over here is, you must be wondering, why did I not talk about the SI units over here? Because you see, mass is present on the left side also, mass is present on the right hand side also. So 50 grams and 100 grams was given in the question. Why did I not convert it into both of these into kgs? Because if you divide by 1000 on this side, you divide by 1000 on this side, effectively you do not make any significant changes. Okay, so even if you don't divide on both sides by 1000, still you will get the correct answer. Okay, because this time you have masses present on both sides. Okay, so in such cases it is really not necessary. Okay, so now you go ahead, 50 to the 100. Okay, so now in the next line you can write down C1 multiplied by 150 minus 20 is 130 equal to, now you can multiply this to 8.4 multiplied by 20 minus 11 will give you 9. Okay, now C1 can be written as 8.4 multiplied by 9 divided by 130, and when you do this division you will get a final answer as 0.582 joules per gram Kelvin. Once again, reason why I have written gram over here is because you see all the other specific heat capacity was also given in joules per gram Kelvin. Okay, so this is my final answer. Now what was different about this question from the rest of the questions that we have done? The difference was that in this particular case, one hot body was losing heat, the cooler body was gaining heat. This process took place till there was a final temperature achieved. Okay, so heat given by the hot body equal to heat taken by the cold body, assuming that no heat is lost to the surrounding. This is the principle of calorimetry which is applied in this particular numerical. Okay, so This is what we have to do. Now moving on to the last question of this particular lecture. So let us read the question. 45 grams of water at 50 degrees centigrade in a beaker is cooled when 50 gram of copper at 18 degrees centigrade is added to it. So let me underline the two different bodies that are there. Okay, one is water, the other one is copper. Water is at 50 degrees, copper is at 18. So obviously the hot body is the water. When copper piece is mixed, going to be mixed into it, dropped into it, the contents are going to be stirred. Stirred means basically moved with a piece of spoon or something, so that they get mixed together. Obviously copper cannot get melted into water just like that. So the process that will take place is water at 50 degrees centigrade, when it comes into contact with copper at 18 degrees, water will lose heat and copper will gain heat. Okay, so let us write down Q lost by water should be equal to Q, which is heat, gained by copper. Okay, again this is according to the principle of calorimetry. So because you see, after mixing they attain a final temperature. So let that final temperature be T degrees centigrade or T Kelvin, whatever. Let us assume it to be T. Okay, now we have to find this final temperature. What other information is given? CW. C means specific heat capacity, W means water. So specific heat capacity of water is given and specific heat capacity of copper is also given. Okay, so once again let us write this down as Q1, let us write this down as Q2. So this becomes M1 C1 delta T1 and this becomes M2 C2 delta T2. Remember, the left side is the hot body, which is water, because it is losing heat. Okay, what is the mass of water given? 45 grams multiplied by, again I am not converting this into kgs because on the right hand side also you have same gram. Okay, so C1 means C for water, so that is 4.2 multiplied by, now the change in temperature of water. Since water was at a higher temperature, after losing heat its temperature will come down, so the change will be 50 minus T, because earlier temperature of water was 50. When its temperature will fall, it will settle at T, because we have assumed the final temperature to be T. So the change in temperature will be 50 minus T for water. Now come to the right side, come to copper. The mass is 50 gram. C2 means C of copper, which is 0.39 multiplied by delta T2, which is the change in the temperature of copper. Now copper, remember, was at 18 degrees, so it was at lower temperature. When it will gain heat from water, its temperature will rise up to what? Rise up to T. So this time T is more, T minus 18 will be the difference in the temperature. So if you notice this particular equation, there is only one unknown, which is the T, that we have to find out. Okay, so now this basically just remains a mathematical question. Now the concept was present over here. Okay, so now once again you don't have, since this is a question involving same entities on both sides, so you will not have to convert any gram into kgs and so on and so forth. So simply 5 9s are 45, 5 10s are 50. This you can do. 9 2s are 18, carry 1, 9 4s are 36 and 137 multiplied by 50 minus T is equal to, this gets multiplied to 0.39 into 10, so that becomes 3.9 multiplied by T minus 18. So you can open these two brackets. Essentially what you are going to get is 653.4 roughly is equal to 13.9 T. So that T, when you calculate, it will come out to be 653.4 divided by 13.9, which will come out to be roughly equal to 47 degrees centigrade. Okay, the final temperature will be 47 degrees centigrade. Why 47 degrees centigrade and why not Kelvin? Because you remember all through the question we have been dealing with degrees centigrade as the individual temperatures. Water was at 50 degrees centigrade. So when its temperature falls down, it is falling down from 50 to 47 degrees centigrade. Okay. Copper's temperature, initial temperature was 18 degrees centigrade. So when it gets heat, its temperature rises up to what? Rises up to T. This T is 47 degrees centigrade. So this is your final answer. Okay. So I hope now after this particular lecture you will be able to solve most of the numericals based on this. Please note that you should not attempt any numericals without going thoroughly through the first couple of theory lectures as well as this particular lecture based on the reasoning and the numerical questions. Okay. So after this, the next numerical session that will be there will involve the state change also. Okay. So let me just give you a brief idea about that state change. Till now what you have discussed is there was one body which was at a higher temperature, one body which was at a lower temperature. When they came in contact, hot body lost heat, cold body gained heat. But the state of the bodies did not change. Water remained water, copper remained copper. Nothing melted, nothing froze. Okay. So here the only heat involved is in order to either raise the temperature of something or to lower the temperature of something. Okay. The heat provided here till now has not had any change in the state of any substance. Okay. Nothing has melted, nothing has frozen, nothing has boiled. But now on we will deal with the latent heat part also in the coming lectures. So in those particular lectures you will also have to solve numericals based on the state change. Okay. So till then, have a nice study through the lectures and stay well. I hope that by the next time when we meet, you will be thorough with at least this part that we have discussed.